Chapter 13, Calloused Hands. Undu had a significantly smaller population than Do, which meant that most people in the Tau-Ceti system preferred doing to undoing. It's the way I feel myself, but after spending a few hours on Undu, eating steak and relaxing with the boys at Undu Utter Utilities, I might be persuaded to change my mind. Anyway, since Do had the larger population and therefore more opportunities for trade and commerce, the Syrians had naturally built a spaceport there. So I reactivated the SPNV and went back to Do. Not long after returning, I was able to book a cabin on the I Want to Go Home with the Armadillo. Its first port of call was Teegarden Star system, which was on my list as one of the 14 systems afflicted by the cosmic milk crisis. It had 3 habitable planets, 2 of them heavy into the dairy business and all suffering economically as a result. Teegarden Star was about 12.5 light years from Sol. We touched ground in less than 2 weeks. My last night on board, I had dinner with the captain, Hillary Highjumper, and her crew. We had a spirited conversation. How are you making up for the loss in milk and milk-related products? I asked the captain. This pipe tobacco business looks promising. I don't touch the stuff myself, but billions do, she replied. Then I asked, any health concerns? In my reading of ancient history, I had come across accounts of the ill effects of tobacco usage. It only affects humans on Earth, so the Syrian Import-Export Council has officially pronounced it as contraband there. A sub-lieutenant then forgot himself and made a typical comment that passed for Syrian humor. Earth lifespans are so short, what does it matter if they die a few days earlier than they would have anyway? As soon as the comment was made, he realized he had made a serious faux pas. He stood up, apologized to everyone around the table, and left without eating his dessert. I looked over at the captain. She had not said a word. Then she said to me, we Syrians are working on improving our social graces. Looks like we've still got a long way to go. I felt sorry for the sub-lieutenant. He would be lucky if he got away with KP duty for only a year or 2. It seemed like a good idea to resume the conversation. I personally know the benevolent dictator of Far Utopia, which is in the Theta Buddhist system. His name is Frick Fontaine, and he's the pipe tobacco oligarch who's promoting pipe tobacco cultivation as a way to deal with the economic losses due to the cosmic milk crisis. Do you know him? Captain Highjumper said, not personally, but I'm familiar with what he's doing. We have high hopes for him to be successful. It will mean more business for us, and the business of Sirius is business. Didn't Calvin Coolidge say that? We ended dinner with a laugh. Chapter 14, Centaurian Connections. As mentioned earlier, Teegarden Star System had 3 habitable planets, but only 2 of which, Puka Luka and Pika Laika, had dairy farming. The 3rd planet, Lucidity, was totally anti-commercial and was devoted to the inhabitants and visitors finding their inner chi. We landed on Puka Luka, and I took a room at the downtown Marriott. I had only just settled down to a cup of Puka Luka tea when there was a knock at the door. Who could it be? I wasn't expecting anyone. Perhaps a Puka Luka delegation welcomed me to their beautiful planet. Who was I kidding? Then I heard a familiar voice. Hey, Dad, let us in. It was Miss Adventure. What in the world was she doing here? Opened the door, and there she was with her husband, Frank. We hugged, and I invited them to sit down and have a cup of Puka Luka tea. I said, it's not Centaurian cider, but it ain't half bad. I then asked, in quotation marks, what I had exclaimed in the narrative. What in the world are you 2 doing here? Miss Adventure laughed and responded, we're scouting new locations for Snobby Lobby franchises. Is this your first step outside the Centauri system? Yes, Miss Adventure took a sip of Puka Luka tea. Any particular reason you chose Tea Garden Star System? I like the name. That was Miss Adventure for you. Worked almost totally on instinct, but what an instinct. I noticed Frank wasn't joining in the fun. He even seemed a little glum. Before I could ask him if anything was wrong, he excused himself and went to the bathroom. So I asked Miss Adventure instead, "What's wrong with Frank? Looks like he just lost a game of croquet." "He got a speeding ticket." "What? Where?" "On the outskirts of the Tea Garden Star System. We got pulled over when we were still over a light year away from Puka Luka." "You mean STL, or slower than light zone, goes out that far?" "Well, I've never heard of such a thing. I can see why Frank is so upset. Poor guy. I like Frank. For the last few thousand years, he had been a good husband and father to my daughter and grandson, Nick. When Frank came back from the bathroom, we commiserated with him for a while, and when Frank started feeling better, we then told a few war stories. It turned out to be a pleasant visit, and I wished them luck in their efforts to expand the Snobby Lobby empire. The inspection tour so far had been a flop, but not a total flop. I had eliminated some possibilities, thereby illuminating other possibilities. My TPE training told me I was not being thorough enough in my investigation. Something was staring me in the face, but its close proximity made it impossible to delineate its shape. It was a specter haunting me in the night. There were clues, or at least I had a feeling there were clues, but up to this point, they just remained out of my grasp. Chapter 15, Elonian Times. Next morning, I tackled the breakfast buffet before heading over to the offices of the Puka Luka Dairy Commission, the PLDC. It was a balmy morning. The birds were chirping and the tea olives were putting out a pleasant aroma. Puka Luka was something of a resort planet, and though its economy was or had been heavily dependent on the dairy trade, it did have some other assets such as tourism to help make it through tough economic times if need be, and as I found out, did need to be. Johnny Go Heavily was the local manager of the PLDC. He arranged for me to have full control of a musketeer, a land and sea rover built by the Musk Motors back in the 91st century AD at the Musk Motors plant in Kiev. It reminded me of my MPV back on Earth. It could be either manually driven or set on autopilot. It also had a kitchen, pull-out bed, and a small but luxurious bathroom. I have to admit, I'm known for my love of hot showers. One feature the Musketeer had that the MPV didn't was the ability to morph into a seaworthy vessel. Unlike Earth, Puka Luka didn't have any extensive infrastructure of incredibly long bridges connecting land masses. Over the next few years, I discovered there were a lot of cows on Puka Luka. There were also a lot of dogs. It also rained a lot. I can't tell you how many times I heard a dairy farmer say, "It's raining cows and dogs." But mostly I just heard them ask plaintively, "What happened to our cows?" It's sad to see grown men cry. Desperate times bring strong emotions. In their desperation, some were turning to religion. For people who live lives of great longevity and who are rarely sick, religion is customarily an issue of minor importance, but the dairy crisis was perpetuating a radical turn in the direction of a higher power. One such entity that formed at this time was the Church of Elonian Times. Its motto was, "I don't know what it's like to be dead, but I do know what it's like to not exist." Its governing credo was the 10 billion commandments. When asked why so many, in Elonian Times, preacher replied, "You're going to live that many years, aren't you? Don't tell me you can't keep one commandment a year." Another religion almost as popular as Elonian Times was the Door of Life. It claimed that you could live forever if you if you had a key to the door. Of course, the door was locked, and guess who had the key? Professor Folio had made an intriguing remark during our meeting. For some reason, it didn't resonate with me at the time. He said, the estimated 4 trillion year lifespan of the Centaurians is just a ballpark figure. There may be no upper limit. After 5.5 years of cows, dogs, and rain, I returned the Musketeer back to the PLDC, reactivated the SPNV, and self-transported to Puka Luka's sister planet, Pika Laika.